2 years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
There's desperation and anguish.
More than 80,000 Afghans have since arrived in America, but this story is still unfolding. I'm Andrea Martin. In my new podcast, Stranger Becomes Neighbor, we'll find out what happens to these new arrivals in our communities. Who would help our newest neighbors? Follow us at kslpodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen.
So what did you think about the picture I put on Facebook and Instagram of you and your mom?
My mom thought it was sweet.
I said, Dr. Matt loves helping people, apple pie, and his mom. Therapy's expensive.
And that's true.
And if you got a question for Dr.
Right.
Matt, because this is a resource for all those in the recovery world. And when I say the recovery world, sometimes it makes me mad because we're all in the recovery world.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think even I have a broader definition of that now, having done this show for a year, and that is that's part of all of our lives.
In one way or another,
Right.
chances are addiction has affected your family. And we're all living in the recovery world. Whether we're addicted ourselves or we're living with a family member, loved one, or friend that is addicted.
It's more often than not that close to home. But even if you can't think of a family member who is struggling with addiction, look around your community. There's so many people and time and resources. And don't tell me that you don't see people who are really struggling, homeless, and need our help. And so, yes, it does affect all of us.
There are so many times during the week when I'm out and about and I'm talking to people that I almost, like at first when I was in the recovery world, I waited to tell people, what I'm doing and stuff like that because I thought, well, maybe I don't have to tell them. Maybe we'll just move on. But now it's like people want me to open that door because they go, I've got a brother. I got a family member.
They want to talk about it.
They want to talk about it. And so now I just, because of Project Recovery and what I'm doing, a lot of times the cat's out of the bag before I even walk in the door.
But isn't that great because now they feel comfortable? They needed to talk about it.
Every meeting that I go to, every conversation that I have usually ends with, hey, do you mind if I get your number? Because I want to talk to you about something, and I gladly give it out. And people reach out on Facebook. And although I'm not working in the recovery facility anymore, I'm still there, and I want to be a resource. So we opened up our Facebook and our Instagram, and we said, "Hey, do you have some questions for Dr. Matt?" Because you're the brains of this operation. I'm the looks.
Well, okay.
Right?
Josh is the looks, man. Let's be honest.
But nobody sees him. He looks like a young Jesus.
We should put him on the face of the show.
Yeah, right?
We'd get a younger demographic, probably.
They say sex sells.
Well,
and he's sexy.
He is.
Josh is sexy. Well, I've got a question for you right here. It said, my husband is a recovering alcoholic, but through the addiction, I became very codependent. How common is that, and what are some of the steps I can take to break the codependency? Now, we've talked about this a lot, and we've had a lot of people on the podcast who are codependent, that's how they maneuvered. They took care of their partners. They looked after them, and they were more just as addicted as the addict themselves.
Right. The addicted person needs, in her case, and in many cases it sounds like, needed a lot of help. Right. A lot of support, a lot of help, a lot of worry going into her husband's life and a lot of conflict, I'm sure, and all of that. And so her whole life and, more importantly, her relationship dynamics became about the addiction with him. Granted, with the effort of doing something good, but that's what it became about. And it's very, very common when a person gets sober. Part of sobriety is being independent instead of dependent on the substance. Mm-hmm. You want to take care of your own life. And to the spouse who has been taking care of you, that often feels, and to some degree it is, a type of pulling away. It's a pulling away of that old caretaking dynamic that sometimes lasts lasted most of their marriage.
I can tell you, probably the conversation went something like this. I can't believe this. I supported you. I looked out for you.
Right.
I did everything that you needed me to do for the past 20 years. And as soon as you sober up, I'm no longer important. What's going on? And so they feel like they're actually losing a part of their identity because their identity was taking care of this person, making sure that their needs were met, concerned about their well-being and not so much their own.
Right. And when that changes, it can be very, very uncomfortable and feel like the relationship's ending. So the answer is, how do we deal with that? Well, you probably need some counseling, honestly.
Like an Al-Anon or something.
Al-Anon is a wonderful resource for family members who are going through any level, any aspect of addiction and recovery, and learning, maybe even in some couples counseling, how to reconnect in a different way. Many people, the majority of their marriage, there was substance abuse and addiction involved in it. And now it can feel like you're getting to know each other for the first time. And that's a beautiful thing if you look at it that way. Part of it for her will be learning how to get her needs met in a healthy way. Instead, her husband was getting needs met, so to speak, in an unhealthy way, and she became a caretaker for him in many ways, I'm sure. And now you're right, her conversation probably did go something like that, and learning how to express herself and get her needs met, and for him to learn how to interact with her in a healthy, independent way.
It reminds me of Lizzie Dankers. We had her on the podcast,
right.
Her and her husband. And we didn't think it was going to be her husband at all that spoke, but, all of a sudden he spoke, and we all sat back and went, wow. But I remember what their counselor or their therapist said to him. She's going to grow up and out. You've got two choices. You let her grow up and out, or you grow up and out with her. Mm-hmm. And he decided that he loved her so much that he went and did it. And he goes, I'm not going to lose her, so I'm going to grow up and out with her.
Exactly. And that's I'm glad you remember that. That's a great way of thinking about what this woman needs to do to get over her codependency and maybe discover a healthy relationship with her husband really for the first time.
It'll bring me back to what we've said, and we've got a lot of themes that run through all the podcasts, but it's self-love. Mm-hmm. You need to have that self-love. And I know so many people who put other people's needs in front of their own, but if you don't take care of yourself, how can you take care of anybody else?
Yeah, the conversation I have with people, I use the foundation of a house as the example typically. And you can build a beautiful house, but if the foundation is rocky, then nothing lasts very long, and it's not quality. But if you spend time building your foundation and revisiting it over the years, then you can build a lot of cool stuff on that foundation. And if you think about your marriage and your children and your profession and your friendships, those are a lot of important things, so your foundation needs to be strong.
Now, I think we've already talked about this, but I think it's important to bring it back. Thank you. I've got lots of friends, clients dealing with high anxiety levels during the pandemic. Even as things are opening up, any advice on anxiety relief activities or exercise is appreciated. Now, for me, I would say go back to meditation. And we've got some guided meditations that you can go back on the podcast list and listen to.
And we're going to be adding more.
But I think meditation is one of those things where, as stupid as it sounds, you can take a vacation in your mind.
Yeah, it sounds silly and a little corny, but the reality is that your brain has this outward focus all day long. You're always sensing things and observing things and processing information just while you're walking around and doing your average day. Your brain needs a rest from that, and sleep isn't always a rest from that. We have dreams and most dream content, I believe, is anxiety-driven, problem-solving, and that's what creeps into our dreams. But by purposefully learning how to quiet your mind and have an inward focus, your brain gets this wonderful relief and relaxation. When I meditate, honestly, I don't think I've ever feel quite as clear and good throughout the day until after I meditate, and then I feel rested and strong. It's a mental strength, and if you haven't ever done it, it's kind of hard to describe. But a mental strength, you feel stronger in your mind, and that's a wonderful feeling.
I had a dream that I was hanging out with Bob Saget from Full House the other night.
Oh, geez.
What do you think that means?
That's not good. I'm not sure, but I don't think hanging out with Bob Saget is a good thing.
Another thing to talk about is exercise, and that's something that I do. And I think gyms are opening up a little bit, and that'll give people some relief. But the other thing about this state, and I've seen it on Instagram, on Facebook, is we have so many beautiful spots to hike to get out and enjoy some of the most beautiful country that this country has to offer. I mean, it really is amazing.
People come from all over the world to experience what we have.
When I was on Channel 2, we started this segment called Road Tripping, and the whole idea is that we have this beautiful backyard that so many Utahns have never even been to play in.
Right.
And so why not? I think road trips are going to be the family vacation of the summer, where load up the family, go down to Zion if you're out of Utah.
If you're from the East Coast, Zion,
and then maybe up to Alta. I love it. You're not from around here, are you? Nope, I'm not. But there is so many great hikes, and this to get out with the family.
Yeah, yesterday I was working from home, and in between sessions, they timed it perfectly on accident. My parents stopped by, which they live about 45 minutes away and don't normally pop in on us. And that was fun. They had been to a hike up Big Mountain. They went up to Big Mountain, and, my parents are in their 70s, but they drove up there and they showed us some pictures of how beautiful it was and the wildflowers and just what a really nice day they had. And I could tell their spirits had been lifted, and they felt great. My parents looked happy, and so gyms are good, and support your local gym if that's what you do, because I know those people financially need our support, and there's a lot you can do in a gym that's hard to do other places. But really, if you want to do something great for your mental health, go outside. I mean, it is just beautiful. Find a trail. The Bonneville Shoreline Trail is an easy one to access all over the place. Lots of different access points. Go to the park. There's a lot of exercise, and getting that sunlight, being outside in the fresh air. I mean, it's an old-fashioned idea, but it's maybe more timely now than ever. So
my mom will buy just about anything.
Oh, yeah?
She buys it.
Can I put in any requests?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Because they'll fall right behind mine. But my mom taught me this thing, and I haven't really done it yet. But tell me if you've heard of it. Have you guys heard of grounding?
In what context?
So what you're supposed to do is take off your shoes, take off your sandals, go out in a yard, on a beach, anywhere you can, and become one with Mother Nature. But to
concentrate on that.
Take your cell phones out, take your music out,
right.
everything away from you, and just get out there and walk around and take your feet and kind of
feel the earth,
pinch the dirt, get it between your toes. And she swears by it. She says
that's a smart thing to do.
She goes, it reconnects me with the world.
I would say that falls under the category of mindfulness, right?
Probably.
Yeah, it's a mindful activity.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I'm sure she saw it on YouTube that somebody recommended this. She spent 45 minutes watching it, and then she waited a half hour, called me and goes, you know what you need to do? Okay, Mom, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
And I answer about 4 or 5 of those calls a week from her, but I'm going to try it. It's something to do.
Well, I can tell you that even in the best of times, when there aren't all these social stressors and pressures, one of my very favorite things that we do every year is go on a big backpacking trip. And part of it is for that very reason. We're so far away from cell service. There's no point in, even turning your phone on. And you're just there in nature. You feel grounded in your surroundings, very healthy.
And the conversations are real.
Oh, yeah. And they're not, it's fine to talk about popular culture and all those sorts of things. But you're right. That stuff starts to fade to the background, and the conversations with your friends and family become very real and personal.
I love it. Hey, you're listening to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction, but more importantly about recovery. Coming up, more questions with Dr. Matt as we navigate the crazy world we live in.
A stranger with a gun came upon 2 teens taking pictures under a rising full moon. But violence is only the beginning of this story.
Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and I've spent my career talking about how lives are undone by violence. The Letter is a podcast about how lives are remade. Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, Dr. Matt, I've got another question for you, and this is kind of a long one.
Okay.
And so I'm going to do my best at reading it. You do your best at listening.
Okay.
Here
I'll
we
try
go.
to stay focused.
So my brother committed suicide almost a year ago. His wife, my sister-in-law, has struggled with addiction for the past 15 years at least. She's been in recovery for a year or so when my brother took his life. That's when she relapsed. She started abusing her depression medication, then it moved on from that. She came clean with her parents and my parents about a relapse in November, and due to insurance issues was only able to outpatient treatment, which I just found out was for about a week since she's relapsed again. She mentioned to my dad that it's too hard to be around our family. I don't blame her for that. She distanced herself from us, but would still let us see the kids. I would text her every so often to let her know we love her and how she was doing. She started taking that as me investigating her. She slowly stopped responding to my text, then completely blocked me so my text won't deliver. Blocked me from social media and etc. She got control of my brother's social media outlets and blocked everyone in my family from seeing those and has even deleted his Instagram. She then blocked me via phone to send me a text to start some sort of drama. I usually respond with some short, simple answer, but it doesn't matter. She'll find something out of nothing. Also, it's not just me she's doing this with. It's everyone in my family except my dad and even members of her own family. This is just what's been going on since my brother passed. He's usually the buffer and pretty much sworn to secrecy of all things going on. I don't want to ignore her because I don't want her to keep my nieces and nephews from me. What would be the best course of action? I mean, that's a heavy one.
Yeah, that's a heavy one.
But it's one that's probably pretty common.
Yeah, I was going to say I can think of several other people who've had very similar situations. First of all, I mean, our hearts go out to that family for losing somebody to suicide and how difficult that is to adjust and move forward in life. You never really move on in a way, but you move forward and the stress and grief that family's experiencing, we feel a lot of love for that. I think she sounds like somebody who really, really wants the best for her sister-in-law. And the hardest thing for her probably will be, for now, to respect the boundary that her sister-in-law has put up. It may not be a healthy boundary. We don't really know. I mean, if she's actively in an addiction right now, if she's relapsed again, she may be doing this for reasons that our listener wouldn't agree with or is worried about. But I think she's an adult and we have to respect that boundary. That being said, I can think of a similar situation with someone that I worked with years ago, and the story that they relayed was that in a situation just like this, they had written a very short note that just said, basically, I love you, and I am going to respect your boundary. I would love to reconnect with you someday in the future if you ever feel the need to do that. And then they had someone who could deliver that to that person. Years later, that the story did have a happy ending. They reconnected, and so that might be some advice for our listener, and that would be, if your father is in communication with your sister-in-law, I wouldn't write a long letter. She probably would be too fatigued to try to read through a whole bunch of thoughts and feelings. I would put down just a few lines that basically say, I love you. I respect your boundary, and I'd love to connect with you again sometime and see if, your dad would be willing to deliver that to her. And then back off and respect her boundary, I guess.
But with the nieces and nephews, I mean, I think that's a whole different level of love and concern.
Right. That's a different situation. It sounds like, if I recall correctly, the sister-in-law is allowing the nieces and nephews to have contact with the family.
It sounds like with the father.
Oh, just with the father?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, again, she can communicate with her dad and say, Dad, please let me know if there's anything I can do for my nieces and nephews, and I love them, and, are they doing okay, and making sure that, somebody is looking out for those kids. But
it's got to be so frustrating because, like we said, a majority of us out there want to fix someone's problems, want to help them and do those. But when you're not allowed to do that and you sit there and there's nothing you can do, that helpless feeling is just got to be so hard.
It is, of course, yeah. That feeling helpless, and like the children are vulnerable population, and so that's why I would say maybe she can check in with her dad on a regular basis to make sure that the kids seem to be doing well. But a couple of thoughts. One is people are on their own journey in life, and we don't know where that journey is going to take someone. And right now, we may look at their path and not feel like it's unnecessarily hard or that there are solutions. But the most meaningful, long-lasting solutions are ones that we come to on our own, and sometimes we have to go through things to get there. So that would be a thought for her. The other one is, just because things look bleak now doesn't mean that they'll always be that way. And in fact, something that seems like it could be permanent, like this case, may be temporary and short-term. We don't know. You have to be, I think it's important to be hopeful and realize that it doesn't necessarily mean that she'll always have this boundary up.
I mean, I think you hit it right there. I mean, how many people have came in this podcast and never imagined their life away from their addiction, never imagined that things would get better? So many people would sit there at what their so-called rock bottom was and say, I was even there going, my life's forever going to be changed. And it is forever changed. But I can tell you right now, my life is 100% better than it's ever been. It's tougher. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, there's certain things that are tougher for me. Yeah. But I go to bed, and I wake up happy. And sometimes I look at the heavens and I go, this is amazing. Because 2.5 years ago, I would have never thought this was possible.
Yeah. Well, and you feel the energy from a lot of the guests that come on the show, like Jared last week. Like his energy was just like effervescent. You could just like feel it. And he didn't feel that way when he was in his addiction. But now he's this smiley, happy, high energy guy who's focusing almost all of his time on trying to help other people. And so sometimes to get to that sweet spot in life, you have to go through some hard things. And what you go through and what I go through and someone else goes through, those are our own paths. And that's what I mean by, people are on their own journey. And even though we might want to pull them out of it, that might not be the right thing to do. You can ask, you can offer, but people have to do things their way.
Yesterday, I got a call on my phone, and it didn't have a name on there. And I was driving with my girlfriend. She goes, why don't you answer that? And I said, 2 reasons. And she goes, what? And I go, either it's creditors, right, or it's spam, and either one I don't want to talk to either one. I don't want to talk to them. So what normally happens is that after the stops ringing, I'll hit message to see if I've talked to them in the past.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Or I'll see if they left a message. And so what happened was it was somebody that I was talking to during my days at Pinnacle Recovery that I was when I was working for him. And it was a dad, and he called me and goes, hey, I've talked to you about 3 months ago. I don't know if you remember me. And I said, yes. And how are you? And we talked for a minute. He goes, my daughter went through a 30-day program, and we thought she was going to be good, and she was doing good for a bit. It's a story that we hear all the time, but then now things are worse than they've ever been. Yeah. What can I do? And I took a deep breath, and I says, you can love her.
Yeah.
But you've got to set boundaries. I said, the problem is you're trying to fix her problem. Now, do you understand what I'm saying? He goes, yeah. And I go, it's her problem.
Right.
So unless she wants help, there's nothing you can do. And you can, except for love her.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Don't you think that...
But that's what's maddening about this whole thing is that it's her problem.
It is, yeah.
And if she doesn't want help, there's nothing you can do. And then this is just me speaking, Casey. And I believe this. There is nothing you can do to fix her problem. You can help her with her problem, but you can't fix it.
And I think because, we, as a parent, you take this little baby and you raise a child and a young adult, and now they're in the throes of an addiction, and you're used to fixing problems for this person. Mm-hmm. Even though they don't look like a little kid anymore, you still have that parent-child relationship. And so I think it's the hardest. Siblings can set boundaries better. But parents, they really struggle most of the time setting a boundary, and accidentally can enable the behavior by providing resources for the person to continue to use. Anyway, that's hard advice. It's probably, the dad was hoping for you to give him some magic, solution like any dad would. But you're right. You have to love them. You can offer help, but you have to set clear boundaries.
And that's where we ended. I said, you got to have boundaries, without getting into her situation. I said, I don't think she's felt the burn because you've always been there to rescue her.
Right.
You know what I mean? You've helped her from one situation to the next, and that becomes her normal. She knows that she's going to get deep, and Dad's going to come in and save her. So you've got to set boundaries. And I said, not only you, your whole family's got to set boundaries. Right. And unless you can get the whole family to set these boundaries and keep them, addicts know where to go. They know where the weak links are. They know where there's a gate. They know where there's a hole. And they're good at sneaking in them and getting through and getting what they want. And it's the reality of it, man.
It is. And I think what's hard, some people's rock bottoms are pretty bottom. We've had some guests on the show, and of course we know other people who you wouldn't want. If you think about setting a boundary with your child, like, does that mean they're going to end up homeless? Does that mean they're going to, end up in scary, dangerous situations? I guess it might. But a boundary that's set in love and offers support for when they're ready to get sober is a loving boundary. It's the best thing you can do. But I would imagine as a parent, it's one of the hardest things you can do. But it is the thing that creates the outcome that you want, or at least has the hope possibility of creating that outcome.
Well, Dr. Matt, I want to say thank you very much for, giving me a little free therapy and answering all the questions, because once again, you are the brain of this whole operation.
Well, I think that we need to get you a honorary therapist degree, because you're taking phone calls and answering people's questions. And I like that because, and I've said this before, if more people would make themselves available to friends and family and strangers even, what a better world this would be. Yeah, sometimes you do need a professional degree to do certain things. I can't say that I disagree with that. But a lot of stuff in life can get better just by having somebody who will open up their heart and their time and listen and talk through things with us, even if they don't know the answer. And so I think we need to print up a honorary therapist degree for you.
We should get bumper stickers. Project Recovery. Shut up and listen.
Okay. There you go.
Right?
Sure.
Because sometimes I think that's what I want to tell the world right now. Just shut up and listen to what's being said.
Right. I think the best thing people could do right now is get off social media, limit their intake of news, and then read what's really going on in the world, and talk with their closest friends and family about it. Discuss your thoughts and feelings. Come to your own conclusions, but educate yourself and listen to others.
There you go. Hey, you're listening to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction, more importantly, about recovery. It's brought to you by our friends at useonlyasdirected.org. They got a 3-part solution: speak out, opt out, and, of course, throw out, and they'll be on next week. Project Recovery, it's a KSL podcast.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.